All right. It looks like we have folks joining us from all over. So thank you all for being here. Um, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 10:01, so um, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. We're really excited to have you here. This is a Solar 101 webinar, and we're going to be covering a broad, high-level overview of residential solar as it stands right now in 2026. This webinar is the first of two in our residential webinar series that's kicking off this summer. Our next session will be a live proposal review and demo with Drew Bialco on July 22nd. So we'll be sharing out more about that. Keep an eye out if you're interested. Um, Today's webinar will run for about 30 minutes. We'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers. And as we go through the presentation, we would encourage you to use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will address any questions that come up. Jamie will address those at the end of her presentation. And another quick note, the webinar is being recorded. We'll send it out after in case you want to come back to anything or share it with anyone else who you feel would be interested. And if there are topics you're interested in that aren't covered in today's session, we would encourage you to head on over to our YouTube page. We've got a great library of recorded webinars, some of which feature Jamie, your presenter today, and some feature some of our other solar consultants. So again, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your day. And with that, I will hand it over to Jamie Jones, our residential solar coordinator, and we will get started.
Thanks, Caitlin. You can shift to this next slide.
Okay, great.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Today's webinar is going to go over some broad topics about Solar 101, primarily about our company, home suitability, which are some of the core things that we look at when we are helping customers determine if their site is suitable for solar, financing options, battery storage, installer qualifications, and solar savings and payback. So again, I'm Jamie Jones. Thank you for joining. I'm the solar sales coordinator for Kokosing Solar. I've been with the company 18 years, and I lead the sales team, and I also sell residential solar and what we call light commercial solar. So that's commercial projects that are 250 kW and below. I have 16 years experience in the residential and light commercial sales sector. I started with the company kind of as an inside sales specialist and office administrator, and then by 2010 had graduated into a sales role assisting many Ohio customers to help them go solar on their homes. And my focus is to be educational and kind of take a listen first approach and help customers understand their site and the best, the best goals for their home to help them arrive at the best solution that's going to work for them and the multiple goals that they may have when they're looking into solar. So first, what differentiates our team if in comparison to other companies in Ohio? First of all, Kokosing Solar is the oldest solar company in Ohio. We were founded in 2000, so we have been helping homeowners go solar for 26 years. And we were acquired by Kokosing Industrial in April of 2022. And Kokosing Industrial is a third generation family owned Ohio-based construction company that just celebrated 75 years in the industry. So we operate as their solar division. And we are headquartered, our solar headquarters is in Athens, Ohio, where we were founded. We have a passionate team that takes pride in their work. They're well trained, earn a living wage, and they're employed by our company. And we also have a 24/7 safety standard within our team, where safety is our number one and top priority, that we're ensuring that we are performing our work with safety in mind for our crew and the sites that we work on. And we are a results focused business. And our strategy is to provide high quality projects and position ourselves as a long-term partner, and that we're a trusted partner so that, we can continue to work with customers on many repeat projects. And we have done that in the past where we've got customers that have come back to us for, battery installations or battery retrofits or expansion systems to their projects. So we position ourselves as your long-term partner in working with us. So next we'll go into home suitability and how we analyze a site to see if it's suitable for solar. So first, we look at the orientation of the home, a roof. Oftentimes, we are retrofitting solar to existing structures, and some of them may be more suitable for solar than others. It's industry standard that the ideal orientation is south, 180 degrees south for positioning your solar panels for optimal sun exposure to generate electricity. We can look at other roof elevations such as east and west or southeast and southwest. You can see that there are slight losses when we're looking at different orientations. 10 to 20% for east and west losses versus south, and southeast and southwest a little bit less, between 5 and 8% losses. We use PV watts often, which is a web-based solar energy calculator developed by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and that estimates production based off of various inputs such as zip code to pull in weather data for our location. And then it will take into consideration the orientation factor, and then tilt and shade, which are other system losses, which we'll get to. So it's okay if you don't have a south-facing roof to install solar. We can look at other roof elevations, but just know that there will be system losses and that we will put those calculations in the solar estimate when we're showing you what the system's going to produce in the location that it's installed in. North-facing roofs, we don't install on north-facing roofs, kind of as an industry standard, but we can if the pitch is 10 degrees or less. So if there's a pitch that is greater than 10 degrees, we won't consider the north-facing roof elevation just because it's not going to provide you the best production. Though solar panels can produce an ambient light, they produce best when there is direct sun exposure for that photovoltaic, conversion into electricity. Shade is another design consideration. Obviously, completely unshaded is best. Light shade, there'll be some slight system losses, and heavily shaded roof areas have feasibility issues. Shade can have a greater impact on solar production versus a less than perfect orientation. So shade kind of is a culprit. If you've got a heavily shaded site, we may recommend that you remove some trees if you're open to that, or sometimes we'll recommend putting the system in an open space in the yard or in a field as a ground mounted system where we can keep the array out of the shade and also position that array to have the best tilt angle and the best orientation factor for optimal production if the roof doesn't yield, doesn't have good feasibility. Our proposal tool uses Google 3D modeling to remotely calculate shade. And there are other on-site tools that help us calculate shade as well. One of those is Solar Pathfinder, where we actually take an instrument onto the roof or onto the site location, and it has a reflective surface on it, which will capture any shading obstructions around it. We can take a picture of that and run it through a software program and do a shade trace to determine what the on-site shading is. And there's also a tool called Scanifly, where we can fly a drone and take some imagery of the site and then run those drone captures through a program called Scanifly, which will generate a report and tell us what the shade losses are on site. Roof slope factors in when we are pre-designing systems and providing proposal. The best roof slope in our area of Ohio is between 30 degrees and 40 degrees, which is kind of the ideal pitch. And that goes by latitude. So the ideal pitch is determined by latitude. So Ohio's latitude varies per city, but approximately it's 40.36 degrees north. So 30 to 40 degree tilt angle is ideal for our area, kind of across the board. We realize that we're oftentimes installing again on existing homes that may have not been built for solar, and standard home construction roof pitches are between 412 and 612. So those also work well with just slight system losses. Again, PV watts can help us calculate the difference between a 412, 612 pitch and a 30 to 40 degree pitch. So we do have those tools that will calculate those minute losses from just small differences. And then flat roofs are less common in residential installations. We see those typically when we're doing larger commercial projects, like on warehouses and manufacturing facilities. But there are some homes that have flat roofs. And so typically panels are installed using a racking system that's called a ballasted racking system that does angle the panels between 5 degrees or 10 degrees, depending on the panel orientation, whether it's in portrait orientation or landscape orientation. And it takes special kind of attachments sometimes if we're going to flush mount those flat. Most installations on a pitched roof are what we call flush mounted. So the panels are at the same pitch as the roof. And then with the racking attachments, the panels themselves are elevated off the roof of about 5 inches, flush mounted 5 inches. And that is to prevent wind loading. So that's usually the racking manufacturer's specifications for installing pitched roof panels. Roof type and conditions come into question sometimes when individuals are looking to install solar. We get a lot of questions on whether customers should re-roof prior to installing solar. And we get a lot of questions on what type of roofing material is best for solar installation. So our rule of thumb and how we best advise our customers is that if your roof is 15 years or younger, that's ideal. But if you have a roof that's kind of nearing its life, 15 years and older, we recommend that you work with a qualified roofer to perform a roof inspection to give you the best advice on whether you should re-roof prior to installing the solar and the solar installation. So they can tell you if you have any shingle degradation, or any potential damage that would hinder installing solar at this time, and then maybe considering a re-roof. We install solar on metal roofing, asphalt shingles, that's ideal. And then membrane roofs, which is less common in residential, but sometimes, usually membrane roofs, if we are working on a residential system that has a flat roof, they'll have a rubber membrane roof. That requires custom racking attachments. And we do not install on slate or ceramic just because of risk of cracking. And we do not install there's a newer roofing product now, it's a metal shingle roof, and we don't install on that. Utility considerations are something that we also evaluate as well. There are three different types of utility companies in Ohio. We've got the investor-owned utility companies, which are regulated by the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, such as AEP, First Energy, Duke, AES, which was formerly Dayton Power and Light. And then we have rural cooperatives such as South Central Power, Buckeye Rural Electric, and then there are some municipalities. So with investor-owned utility companies, their net metering is regulated by PUCO, and they offer net metering, which is a full retail credit. So you're getting a one-for-one credit for your energy exported into the grid, and up into the point where all energy costs for that month have been recovered. And then after that, any excess generation that's exported back to the grid is credited at the wholesale rate or what they call the avoided cost rate. With rural co-ops, you often have a structure called a crediting structure called net billing. And that's where all exported solar energy is credited at the wholesale rate or avoided cost rate, which is basically what the utility pays to buy the electricity energy. Um, a few more considerations when we're looking at what type of utility company you have with regard to solar is that they have different sizing caps. The investor-owned utility companies, the sizing cap or generation cap for systems is you can size a solar system to generate 120% of what you consume from the grid in an annual period. And the rural cooperatives usually have a sizing cap of 100%. Some of them may have that 120%, but most of them you can size your system to generate 100% of what you consume from the grid in a 12-month period. Rural cooperatives also have a KW size cap. So that's your nameplate system size. And typically for residential, that's 25 kW. So that's your number of panels multiplied by your panel wattage will give you your system in watts. You divide that by 1,000, you get it in kilowatts. So it can't exceed 25 kilowatts. And then we also have to consider the utility transformer power feed that's feeding electricity to your home. So any system size, regardless if you're with an investor-owned utility company or a co-op, the system size AC, that's alternating current, cannot exceed the size of the utility transformer because we're unable to push more power back into the transformer than the transformer's rated at. So typically residential transformers, I see anywhere between 10 kVA to 25 kVA. Some might be, greater than that, but we have to consider that transformer rating when we're sizing residential systems on site. So energy offset. Most customers want to try to offset as much electricity as their site allows. I find that most customers really want to save on that. Their primary goal is wanting to save on their electric bill and lower that electric bill. And so the system size is going to be dependent on the available space to install. And then how much energy you use is another thing that we analyze to show you, what your site is conducive to producing or generating because based off of footprint. And then we look at your 12-month energy profile and then try to get the best offset that we can with what your site is conducive to producing versus what your electric consumption is. And then another driver on system size is budget, like what the customer expectation is, what they have, budgeted for solar is also how we approach sizing a project to meet the customer goals. Financing. There are different ways of financing or purchasing your solar. And one is cash. That's paying for the system outright, and owning your system outright. And cash also could mean that the customer is procuring their financing through their own banking institution or using and accessing a home equity line of credit, which then would be, a cash purchase to installer. The other is a solar loan or solar financing. And there are many companies that offer solar financing. Solar financing are typically zero money down loans. They're fixed loan terms with no early payment penalties and often have terms 10, 15, and 20-year terms. And then there are leasing or TPO, third-party ownership, where the solar customer is the site host, benefiting from the energy savings from the solar install, but they're not the owner of the system. And the third-party system owner is eligible then for any incentives such as SRECs. So typically with a leasing option, there is a buyout term in the TPO agreement where the customer has the option to purchase the system after a certain number of years. Pros and cons of leasing. With leasing, there sometimes in comparative to financing, there could be low to no upfront costs and no maintenance because the system's owner is responsible for the maintenance. But the cons of leasing is you get no equity in the system. You're not the owner of the system. You're just the site host benefiting from the electric bill savings. There could be unpredictable monthly payments because there could be some variability in your term or your rate. And then, as I mentioned before, the TPO or third party owner is eligible for any incentives. And right now, the incentive for residential systems is selling solar renewable energy credits, which then the third party owner would qualify for versus the homeowner. Solar energy storage. So as battery technology becomes more advanced, I mean, in 2008, when I started working in the industry, most people weren't even discussing batteries, and we were not installing a lot of batteries. And batteries at the time were primarily in the realm of off-grid systems where people didn't have grid connection at all and needed to be, responsible for all of their power generation. And the batteries then were like lead acid batteries in a large cabinet of batteries, and required a lot of maintenance and also had a battery life of about 4 to 6 years. So as the industry has grown, like the solar PV industry has levelized, and I think in its technology, but batteries are still evolving. And as we are seeing products such as the Tesla Powerwall 3 and Franklin AP battery and the Enphase batteries, we're seeing that lithium iron phosphate technology, where batteries have greater efficiency, they assume less space. They're making more sense. They are coming down in price. So a lot of people now are considering storage when they're thinking about solar, or they're retrofitting storage to existing solar, and they're asking, are they a good candidate for storage? So secure power is one of the reasons why people are looking into batteries, because as we know, solar is grid interactive, so it's required to auto disconnect if there's a power failure as a safety feature, as a safety mechanism. And so if you have solar, but you don't have batteries, when the grid goes down in your area, your solar has to auto disconnect, so it's just sitting idle on your roof. Um, so a lot of people who are in areas where they have long-term and frequent power outages may need secure power versus customers that are in an area with greater grid stability. So they'd be a good candidate for batteries. Some people are interested in batteries to use them in self-consumption mode. Self-consumption mode is where you can use the stored energy in your battery bank in your battery system when the grid is operational. So if the solar is not meeting your full load demand, the power sequence would be solar, feeding your instantaneous loads, then batteries next, and then after that, grid. So self-consumption mode is something that helps further mitigate your electric charges, especially like in the evening hours when you don't have solar production. And self-consumption mode would be really beneficial for areas where there's time of use rates, like in California. And then the other is maximizing savings, and self-consumption mode can help you maximize those savings. Battery design considerations. There's battery plus solar. So that is, that secure power where basically your solar and your battery, if there's a power outage, are going to disconnect from the grid and form a microgrid. And then you are running off your solar and batteries during that outage and you've got secure power. Battery expansions or retrofits are individuals who have existing solar that may want secure power and are retrofitting a battery to an existing system. And then price point when installing batteries and solar together, you're getting kind of a better price than if you're retrofitting batteries later. That's basically due to some of the technology advancements now where there is an integrated battery and inverter. The Tesla Powerwall 3 is an integrated battery and inverter that is a DC coupled battery. So you're getting kind of that inverter and solar integrated in one piece of equipment, which has helped to bring down the cost. And then oftentimes retrofitting batteries to an existing system can double in price just because it's an AC coupled battery to a system that already has an inverter. Usually when we're doing retrofits or expansions, we have like secondary deployment costs. You also have interconnection costs again, because we have to do an interconnection application with your utility company to let them know that we're modifying your system. And then there's additional permitting costs. So sometimes if you're considering solar, considering storage at the same time is going to offer you a savings because all of those costs are one-time costs and it's rolled into one project. Another consideration with batteries is loads. So when we are looking at how many batteries you need, which is also going to drive the price, do you need one battery or two batteries, is dependent on what you want to back up. Do you want to back up whole home loads, or do you want to back up partial loads, or what you consider critical or essential loads? And then another design consideration is redundant backup. Some people are interested in batteries, though they may have a whole home generator system. And that's because, they might have concerns about not being able to access propane for a long duration of time, or just helping to mitigate, spending extra money on propane or that fuel source for that backup system. So they may want redundant backup. And in that scenario, you would have your solar generation, and then you would have your battery would be the next in sequence. And then when the battery is depleted, then you could rely on the redundant backup system of the standby generator that's already on site. How many batteries do I need? We get this question a lot when we're working with customers to understand what their power needs are and how many battery units will help them have secure power and meet their goals. And so one thing that we look at is load demand. That's in the beginning stages of kind of the pre-qualification stages. Our inside sales specialist will ask for pictures of your electric panel. And that's so the solar consultant working with you can look at all of the loads in your electric panel. They can see what your main breaker rating is, whether it's a 200 amp service or a 400 amp service, because they have different battery configurations for both. And then like, what's your largest load? Typically I see, large loads being EV chargers, electric ranges, AC units and heating units that are electric. So we have to see what your motor loads are, what those breaker ratings are, and then how many loads you have in that panel. So the largest load in your panel and then the number of loads in your panel is going to help us determine the number of batteries that you need to get the time and duration and the backup power that you need out of your battery system. Time and duration is really what your highest month's usage is and what month that falls in. Like some people may use more electricity in July, where you have more sun to charge your battery and replenish your battery after usage. Some people's usage profile may be higher in January, where you have less sun for battery charging. So we take that into consideration too when we're designing batteries. And the other is load management. So we always recommend careful load management with your battery system, not running loads that aren't essential at that time to maximize the longevity of and duration of your battery backup system. Like not running the dryer or running the washer at the time, just because it's not essential as opposed to other things like keeping your house cool or keeping your house warm or keeping, the refrigerator running so your food doesn't spoil. So load management is something that the customer can do, kind of load shed or turn some loads off or just be sparing with what you're using when you're running exclusively off your battery power. And then the other is the solar system size, making sure that your solar is generating enough to not only meet your home power needs instantaneous. When we talk about instantaneous loads, it's anything that's running at that time, motor loads or just, loads like lights. Those are manual loads that you do have control over turning them on and off. Motor loads run whether you're at home or not. So we're making sure that the solar is sized to meet your load demand of the loads that you have, but also have that additional or excess power or power generation to store in your battery bank for future use. Solar savings and payback. So solar, we often get asked if solar increases home resale value. And there are studies that show that for Ohio homes, solar panel installations increase a home's value by 3 to 5%. And there's Berkeley laboratories that have provided this study kind of across the United States. And also there are Zillow studies that show this percentage of home resale increase by having solar installed on your home, which also means that any potential buyer is buying a home that has a lower cost of energy than maybe your neighbors that don't have solar. So that's always an attractive feature. Residential energy costs, as we know, continue to rise in Ohio. In our proposals, we model 6% utility inflation. And over the last year, we've seen it be about 7.9%, almost 8% utility costs. Usually in the summer, we see these increases. In the beginning in the industry, when I started working with our company in 2008, I think our average cost of electric here in Ohio was about 10 cents or just under 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And now we see that, utility prices had continued to rise and we're looking more at like 18, sometimes 19 cents a kilowatt hour, depending on the utility company that you have. So electricity continues to go up and solar is a hedge against utility inflation, which helps you lock in your energy prices at the purchase price of the system. So whatever your payback period is, and residential paybacks I see right now on cash purchases are usually between 9 and 14 years, you can lock in that price. So energy independence. This is kind of an example of a recent customer numbers where their average monthly bill is 419 a month, and their blended rate that they paid for electricity is 24 cents a kilowatt hour. So the system's solar system cost, the total installation cost was $40,000. This system was offsetting 76% of the customer's annual electric consumption. And the 76% was because that was a maxed roof on their south-facing roof. They only had south and north-facing roof. So we maximized their south-facing roof with solar, and that in comparison to what the production of that system, in comparison to what they consume from the grid on an annual basis, provided a 76% offset, energy offset. So their 30-year lifetime energy bill savings with solar, assuming that 6% annual increase, is $150,807. So year 30, that's what they will not pay the utility company. That's their 30-year lifetime energy bill savings. And so if you take that and you subtract it by the solar investment or the solar cost, you can see that their estimated net savings is $110,807, which puts their payback at about 12 years on a 30+ year system. So even without the residential tax credit, because most of us are aware that the tax credit on the residential sector expired at the end of 2025, the payback is still within range due to increasing electric rates. And we know that electricity is going to continue to go up. So with that said, solar is a viable solution in helping you not only go green if that's something that you're interested in, but also saving long term on what you pay the utility company and owning your power and having secure power with a generation facility right on your site. So it's right there on your roof generating electric savings. Installer qualifications. So finding a qualified installer is very important. And like I mentioned before, in the previous slides, we're here to be a long time trusted partner with the customers that we work with, that, we're going to be in business. You can rely on us. We're responsive. We've got a dedicated, passionate team of employees that are helping you, make a secure decision to invest in solar energy. So things that you can ask when you are looking at multiple bids and working with multiple companies, which is smart shopping, is how long they've been in business, how many projects have they installed, do we have fully trained and licensed electricians on staff? Does the installer have NABCEP certified holders, which is the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners, which actually our founder is on the board of? Are they BBB accredited? And will they tell you if solar just doesn't work for your site? Because some people just kind of want to get the sale and not tell you that you have feasibility issues and that solar is not going to be a good fit for you. So at Kikosing Solar, we've got, 26 years of solar industry knowledge and 75 years of construction. We have over 1,500 projects and references. We have licensed electricians on staff. We do have NABCEP certified members on our team, and primarily our design team. We have an A+ BBB rating, and we work closely with the homeowner to let you know if your site is conducive for solar and to show you how to maximize your savings. So qualified installers, some of the differences is, self-performing versus subcontractors. We don't use subcontractors. Our installation crew are employees of Kikosing Solar and adhere to our core values of 24/7 safety. Quality and safety is our top priority. We want to make sure that, we're being safe on your property, we're leaving it better than we found it, and that our guys remain safe and adhere to those safety standards when working on your roof. And we want to make sure that we're providing you with a quality installation. We have a dedicated service team that helps troubleshoot service issues. and we're listed on solarethics.org. And we also provide references. So if we're working with customers that want to speak with a reference of somebody that's gone solar with our company in their area so they can kind of hear it straight from the homeowner, what their experience was like. We provide references to installs as close as we can get to your territory, so that you can talk with people that we've worked with about their experience installing their system with Kokosing. And then we have Google, Facebook, Angie's List, BBB reviews. So, looking at those when you're looking for a qualified installer is really important to look at the reviews and also look at employee satisfaction. So you can look at Glassdoor.com, which is basically a review board of what employees have to say about the companies that they work for. So all of these things kind of matter when you're trying to compare installers and trying to find the best qualified installer to perform the installation. We are the longest full-time solar provider in Ohio, as I've mentioned, with 26 years in the solar industry and backed by Kokosing Industrial, 75 years of general contractor experience and family owned. We have over 1,600 clean energy installations totaling 65 megawatts of installed solar. We have trained and experienced installation team and staff, licensed electrical contractors, as I've mentioned. We have a strong history and reputation and referral network. We get a lot of repeat business from happy customers, and we also get a lot of referrals from happy customers that, have told their friends, neighbors, congregations, colleagues about Kokosing Solar and their satisfaction with their installation with our company. And we're also part of an Amicus Solar, which is a purchasing cooperative. Amicus is a member-owned co-op of independent solar companies founded in 2011. There are 80 plus partners, and we are one of those in Ohio. So what Amicus is, the cooperative is just helps us pool purchasing power, share best practices, collaborate on advocacy and policy issues. So we kind of lean on each other as Amicus partners. There's several solar, but like I said, 80 plus solar partners across the United States that are part of the Amicus Solar Cooperative that we're a part of. And then we have a 20-year workmanship warranty on our residential installations. So competitive advantages again, Amicus Solar Cooperative Partner, NAPCEP certified, BBB. We're a Tesla Powerwall certified installer. We're part of Engineering News Record, and we're part of Green Energy Ohio, or we're affiliated with Green Energy Ohio. So 3 simple steps to solar is we have a free consultation process. So when you engage with our company, you'll probably speak with our inside sales specialist, Sydney, and she will ask you for some information that she can forward over to your solar consultant so that they can help best advise you on the best system for your site. And that's typically asking for your address, your electric bill, so we can look at your usage patterns and see who your utility company is, so we can make sure that we're installing and providing you a system quote that's, within their regulatory, standards. She'll ask for sometimes pictures of your electric panel, especially if you're interested in battery backup along with solar. And then you'll have a consultation with the solar consultant in your area who will provide you with a solar proposal and then can walk you through the agreement and then installation.
All right. Thanks so much, Jamie, for all the information. Um, Jamie's contact info is right up here on the screen. And we're going to go ahead and move over to the Q&A section. We've got a little bit of time left and we've got a couple questions to kick us off. Are you ready for some questions, Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So the first question we got from an attendee was during when you were going over some of the net metering information. So the
Mhm.
question is, does net metering include electrical distribution or just the electricity itself?
So I I guess I'm trying to understand there are they referring to distribution and transmission?
Yeah, my guess is probably like, does net metering cover the distribution charges or does it only cover electricity used?
So typically when you are exporting, once you've netted out, so anything that your solar system has produced in the day that's equivalent to what you're consuming in the evening hours when you don't have solar generation is your one for one credit. And then at the end of the month, if you have once you've netted at that month, one and you've exported what we call excess generation back to the grid, that excess generation is credited at the avoided cost rate or wholesale rate. And those credits will carry forward and they can start to be applied to those fixed customer charges and your distribution and your transmission charges. So when you have those rollover credits and sometimes consecutively, it can start to zero out that distribution, transmission, and generation, distribution, transmission, and fixed monthly charges.
Okay, great. Um, all right, we got a question about weather. So I know you went over some shade information, and a little bit of weather information, but does do things like snow and heat realistically impact output?
Yeah, I mean, I we get questions about like I live in Cleveland, so we've got a lot of cloudy days and I worry about solar being viable, in that area of Ohio. And we do remind customers like Germany is a pretty cloudy country and they are the leaders in solar and have a lot of deployed solar and it generates just fine there. When we are doing our proposals, the first thing that we have to do is obviously input the address because we're pulling up the site, we're doing a pre-design, we're looking at all of those design considerations like we talked about. And when we put in that zip code, the proposal tool that we're using will take the weather data from the closest weather station. In our area, that would probably be like the OU airport. And then the like seasonality and the historical weather data is then part of the proposal performance estimate. So we are taking into consideration the fact that we do live in Ohio. We have winter months, but there is going to be snow coverage. And then that snow coverage is calculated in the performance. So, like when you look at what the system's going to output, which is part of what we in our proposal, there's a little link called detailed energy savings table. And when you open that up, it shows the solar output per month. And you can see that, the solar generates more in July versus January and February in those profiles because the weather data based off of that weather station is included in that estimation.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the tools that we have account for
Yeah,
the various
yeah,
weather conditions that we have in
exactly.
Ohio.
Yep.
Uh, Next question is about depreciation. So, can you speak to depreciation and of our panels and kind of like what percent do panels depreciate annually?
Yeah, so panel degradation. Hang on, I'm gonna pop open something over here. So the JA panels that we're using um, are 440 watt per panel. And the industry standard on panels is to have two warranties, one on performance and then the other on workmanship. And typically it's 25 on performance and 25 on workmanship. Sometimes you'll see 25 on workmanship and 30 on performance, or what they call linear power um, output warranty. And typically, and with this panel actually in particular, the JA panel, there is a 1% first year degradation. And then after that, the manufacturer estimates 0.4% annual degradation over 30 years. And then there is a 30-year linear power warranty with that panel, factoring in that 0.4% annual degradation. And so at year 30, the output of the system, the rated output of the system is 87.4% of its nameplate capacity of 440 watts.
So
And
at
that's pretty industry standard, yeah.
Okay, so at year 30, the panel is still producing about 80% of what it was on day one.
87%. Yeah.
87%. Okay. Um, and you said that's pretty industry standard. I know usually when we provide a quote, the quote includes the panel that we're using and we could provide data sheets that has this kind of information. So if you're looking for a specific panel degradation, you could probably find it on the data sheet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Each manufacturer's data sheet does reference that linear power warranty and provides those numbers on degradation. And the annual degradation that I've seen in the last several years has been that zero point 0.4, 0. Half a percent.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions. We've got time for a few more, so if you do have one, please send it in. The next one is about inverter types. So, how do inverter types impact performance and maintenance?
Typically with residential installations that are non-battery, we are leading with Enphase microinverters, which has a 25-year workmanship warranty. And that is because for our Ohio electric code, the current electric code that we're under requires that we are compliant with rapid shutdown. And the microinverter system is compliant with rapid shutdown. Looking over, let's see. I believe that the inverter efficiency for Enphase is 97%. Um, and then when we are looking at maybe a centralized inverter system, that's if we are looking at a Tesla Powerwall 3, like solar and battery system together, where you have the integrated central inverter system along with the battery integrated into that. And that has a different efficiency rating. So central inverters do have their they do have a lower efficiency sometimes just because it's kind of like the string inverter Christmas lights theory, if you get shade, and it's really conducive to to what kind of on-site shade you have. Obviously, if you're in an area where you have more shade, the microinverters are going to be more efficient than a string inverter, because if you've got shade that falls early morning on a couple of panels, it's only impacting those panel performances during that time of shade instead of the whole string performance. So those are some of the things that we take into consideration is just like your site conditions. But we have to be compliant with rapid shutdown, typically using a microinverter system, but we do use that string inverter if you're installing solar and battery at the same time.
Gotcha. Um, we got a question about the typical cost and lifespan of battery systems, or sorry, lifespan and warranty of battery systems. What is the typical lifespan and warranty of the batteries that we're speccing?
Yeah, so with Tesla, it is a 10-year warranty. But depending on there's life cycles too, that determine the longevity of the battery. But the battery is warranted for 10 years, though it could probably last, I'd say, 15 to 18 years. You could get 15 to 18 years longevity out of your battery, depending on how you cycle it. And then what was the other question?
Lifespan and warranty.
Yeah, yeah, I'd
I
say,
think you covered
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Awesome. This is the last question that we have. So if you have any more, send them in, but this will be the last one if not. So I know a lot of factors go into the total cost of an installation. Can you speak to how much of that might be install cost, how much might be equipment, and some of the other things that kind of go into the total installation cost?
Yeah, I mean, this is a full turnkey installation, so it's not just equipment, like equipment sales. So when you're comparing just like purchasing equipment online and trying to translate that into an installation cost, those things are not going to synchronize at all. So we often see people do that sometimes. A lot goes into the installation. I mean, we have our full turnkey installation costs includes, the applicable permitting, your interconnection application with your utility company, which we do these things, these processings on your behalf. So you don't have to do that paperwork. We may ask for some signatures or additional information, but that's all done in-house. And those all have costs that are built into the full installation cost. Your bidirectional meter so that you can net meter, or your existing meter being programmed to be bidirectional. Design engineering. So we have to oftentimes have, stamped engineered, as-built drawings for your system. Your project management. So you work with a project manager closely throughout the installation. Um, Full turnkey installation price also includes small parts. So we think about the major components, like the solar panels, the batteries, the inverters or microinverters. But we also have wire, conduit, panel clips, connectors. So the small kind of balance of system parts. And then you have your installation, and then commissioning. So all of that are, the various components of what make up the full turnkey installation price for your install.
Okay. Awesome. And we did see one more question come through. Currently, they ask, there are no incentives or tax credits available at the present time. Is that correct? Um,
Yeah, for residential, the tax credit expired December 31st of 2025. But residential homeowners can still incentivize solar renewable energy credits. And we have a white paper on that. And we also help our customers understand how they can leverage that when we're working with them.
right. That's a little bit too much of a topic to cover in just one
Yeah.
minute, right?
Yeah,
But if you are interested in solar renewable energy credits during your free consultation, Jamie would be able to talk with you about that and kind of factor that into your payback and pricing and that kind of stuff. Um,
absolutely. Yep.
so that's one great incentive still available.
Yep.
So that brings us to the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Jamie, for all the valuable information. Jamie's contact info again is on the screen. You can reach us also just through our website. You'll get routed to an installer closest to you, familiar with your area. So reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And as I said, this webinar was recorded, so you will get a copy of this in your email here shortly. So thank you again, Jamie. Thank you to all of our attendees who joined us today. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate
Bye
it.
all.